Okay, in part two of this, I want to go through now and hit on the highlights of what we will talk about, what we will call mathematical reasoning. Okay, and mathematical reasoning really begins with some major discoveries. One, in this period, decimals are going to be used for the first time in a new study of math we'll call algebra. We'll have the development of logarithms that help us better describe movement, better describe mathematical relationships between numbers, and change the way we do calculations. But there are two other ideas that are in play here. Okay, up to this point, people depended on what was called deductive reasoning, which said that we start with an accepted truth. We start with a general proposition. And then we try to discover what other knowledge we can find from that truth, from that original idea. Okay? Give you an example of this. All right? You know that I've been a teacher for 11 years. Based on that fact, you would then go through and try to deduce, try to come up with other things that might identify my background. For instance, if I'm an 11-year teacher, what does it say about my place? What does it say about my educational background? What may it say about my age? Although you probably already know that. But you're taking the original point. I'm an 11-year teacher, and you're trying to get what other information you can find about me from the original fact and what you can develop from that idea. Francis Bacon is going to come along and say, well, wait a minute. Instead of always starting with a truth, why can't we start with a question? And then go about a process of answering that question. Bacon's method is going to become known as inductive reasoning, and it's also going to be the basis of the scientific method. Bacon would say, all right, look around, develop a question. Why does my mother yell at me? Why do we have issues with weather in Kentucky? And he would say, from those questions, you would then do long periods of investigation, experiment, and intermediate thought to come up with the answers to those questions. The intermediate thought meaning that you may have additional questions that you're required to answer as a result of the new questions. So there may be a point along the way at which you have to go down a fork in the road, at which your original question may have to be put on hold in order for you to answer these 2 or 3 intermediate questions, all in the attempt to get back to the original question. This will become known as the empirical method. This will also be the basis of the scientific method. So what is being said here is, for instance, if we can experiment, I should be able to take the views of another person, take their instruments, take their discussion, use their material, and come up with roughly the same results. That's going to be the basis behind all that happens in science even today. The next piece I want to talk about is René Descartes. Descartes, of course, the Cartesian dualism, the idea of cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. And Descartes' method is going to be best symbolized by the idea of systematic doubt, skepticism, and skepticism for a reason. Descartes is going to argue that the human mind can be detached from the world and at the same time can objectively analyze the world. So we can essentially remove ourselves from who we are and look at things all around us, look at things in the world, and say, I think about these things, and I see what's going on around me, and I can analyze it and make my own conclusions. Okay? You're going to see three things involved in Descartes' work. One is the idea of mathematical principles. 2 plus 2 is 4, rules in play, things that can be used. The second piece is the idea of logical principles. That A plus B equals C, that we think in a progression, and the progression is based on the combination of thoughts and ideas that we have. The third idea is the principle of cause and effect. That if I don't study for an exam, I'm going to get a bad grade. That if I don't proofread a paper, my teacher or my professor is going to catch too many mistakes. Okay, if you look at all that Descartes is saying, it's going to create a huge issue for the religious community and for politicians alike. Because, number one, for the religious community, God is going to be reduced to only the guarantor of knowledge. Not the all-knowing, not the all-seeing, not the all-believing, but only the guarantor of knowledge. That's going to be a major concern for the religious community. And Descartes is going to come under fire for his ideas. It's going to create more of an issue for the politicians because he is going to want to have people question authority. When logic demands a question, Descartes says you question the leader. Now, do politicians really like to be questioned? The answer to that is no. Not happening. And so you're going to see all of these things become irritants. And it's not just going to be Descartes. All of these people, in one form or another, represent issues for those in power. And what I want you to do now, and in part 3 of this, I'm going to give you an assignment that will allow you to see how difficult these findings were for the church, for others, and give you some additional highlights of what's going on.